Hello and welcome to Extra Innings, everybody. I am your host, Van Noland. Alongside Owen Noland, we have another packed episode tonight to get to. But first, we'd like to apologize. Last week's episode got cut off, the end of it. There was a few things that we were unable to get to, which we will get to later in the show. So we do apologize for that again, but we're back. Technology is our friend now. Kind of. Technology has been mostly good to us. Right before we tried to start our show, the computer wanted to do an update and restart. So this episode is from the iPad. And no commercials, no fancy extra innings intro, no extra innings outro like usual, but we will make do with it. We still got a podcast up for you guys. And we're going to start like we normally do with the Prospect Roundup presented by FireFan. Today's Prospect Roundup, the second edition of the Prospect Roundup 2018, starts with Nick Gordon, a shortstop in the Minnesota Twins organization. He is the brother of Seattle Mariners center fielder D. Gordon. Nick Gordon, a first-round pick 2 years ago? No, more than that. 3 years ago, maybe. In any case, he's now playing for AA Chattanooga, the Twins AA affiliate. He is actually yesterday he went 4 for 7 with a double, an RBI, and a run scored. You say, how did he get 7 at-bats in one game? Well, the truth is he really did. And today, AA Chattanooga had a doubleheader yesterday, thus giving him 7 plate appearances, actually 7 at-bats for the AA Chattanooga. Again, that's the AA affiliate of the Minnesota Twins. Our next player is Blue Jays infield prospect Cavan Biggio. You might recognize the last name, especially Astros fans. He's the son of Craig Biggio. He's in the Blue Jays organization playing at AA New Hampshire this year, or at least to begin this year. He might get called up if he has more performances, like the one he had last night, in which he went 2 for 5 with a home run, an RBI, and a run scored. A good day for Cavan Biggio, for sure. Again, he was playing for AA New Hampshire, the AA affiliate of the Toronto Blue Jays. Our next prospect to highlight is Cardinals infield prospect Yariel Munoz for AAA Memphis. He went 2 for 4, had a home run, and drove in 2 runs for the Memphis Redbirds. Yariel Munoz is ranked the number 12 prospect in the St. Louis Cardinals organization, playing for the AAA Memphis Redbirds. Our next player is a pitcher, Arizona Diamondbacks right-handed pitcher Taylor Widener for AA Jackson. Tossed 5 innings yesterday. He gave up 1 run on 2 hits, and what's most impressive, he didn't walk a single batter, and he struck out 9. So obviously commanding his pitches very well. 72 pitches, 48 of them were strikes. Obviously, you're going to have a high strike percentage when you don't walk any batters and strike out 9. So a good day for Taylor Widener, who's playing for AA Jackson in the Arizona Diamondbacks organization. Our next 2 players are courtesy of the Los Angeles Dodgers farm system. We've got outfielder Alex Verdugo of AAA Oklahoma City, went 1 for 4 with a home run and RBI, and he also walked 1 time for Oklahoma City last night. He hit his 4th home run of the year last night for the Oklahoma City Dodgers, the AAA affiliate of the Los Angeles Dodgers. And the other Los Angeles Dodger on the list is Keibert Ruiz for AA Tulsa. He went 2 for 4 with a home run and 3 RBIs. The 19-year-old catcher has 3 homers in his last 5 games. So a little bit of a power streak for Keibert Ruiz, a AA catcher for the AA Tulsa Drillers in the Los Angeles Dodgers organization. And with that, that will conclude the Prospect Roundup tonight, presented by the FireFan app. Be sure to download that if you have not. It's a sponsor of the Prospect Roundup. And I will now hand it over to Van with probably the most interesting part, the MLB news and notes. And like he said, we'll talk about what we didn't get to on last week's show. So he's got a lot to cover, some from last week, some from this week, with his MLB news.
That I do. We are going to start with a former prospect, Sean Manaea of the Oakland Athletics, the Indiana State Sycamore, the former Indiana State Sycamore. He threw the first no-hitter of the 2018 MLB season. This past week, we saw a few other attempts at perfection earlier in the year. Shohei Ohtani, Bartolo Colon, the two notable ones, and the Padres had a no-hitter broken up in the 8th inning also last week. But it was Sean Manaea who was actually able to accomplish that feat. He became the 12th Oakland A in history to throw a no-hitter and I think maybe even a perfect game. I can't exactly remember for sure, but hats off to him. And the amazing part of it is he did it against the best offense statistically to date in the MLB, the Boston Red Sox, who have been on a tear offensively. And because baseball is awesome, Sean Manaea was able to hold the Red Sox without a single hit for 9 innings. Right? Think of the odds. You have the best offense in baseball. I'm the A's. I'll say, all right, Sean Manaea is going to not allow you guys to get one single hit. You would probably laugh at them, whoever's telling you this, and just shake your head. Say there's no way the best offense in baseball gets no hit by Sean Manaea, who at this point is still a developing young pitcher in the big leagues. A first-round pick, drafted 34th overall by the A's.
No, by the Kansas City Royals, actually.
Oh, that's right, by the Royals.
Was he traded in the Ben Zobrist trade? When they sent Ben Zobrist to Kansas City in 2015?
I believe he was.
The A's have some good young arms in that system.
Yes, a handful of good young arms. A lot of college arms as well.
Yes. Manaea is from Indiana State. They've got a couple of Florida Gators in their system, A.J. Puck and Logan Shore. Were two first-round picks as well.
Yes, the future is promising. A lot of young talent in the Bay Area for the A's. The next thing we have to do is give you the weekly Shohei Ohtani update. I really only mention this because he pitched tonight and it's really current news. And because he threw 98 pitches, his most to date, and only got through 5 1/3 of innings pitched. He allowed 6 hits and surrendered 4 runs while walking 5 batters, which is a season high. So his pitch count was up there. Always interesting to see how they'll manage his pitch count because he's hitting every other day of the week and he's pitching. He has to really do it all.
Well, not at the same time. Until a couple of weeks when the Angels come to Coors Field, that if everything goes as scheduled and he remains on the probable starters when he's supposed to, he is scheduled to start for the first time in a National League ballpark against the Rockies. You say, why is that significant? Well, if you follow baseball at all, you know they don't have a DH in the National League, which means Shohei Ohtani would hit for himself as the pitcher, making it the first time he would do so.
Yes, that would be very interesting. And to be honest, Shohei Ohtani hitting in the National League ballpark is basically having a DH.
Right. Usually you get to the 9-hole hitter, it's the pitcher. They're either going to lay down a sac bunt or it's most likely going to be an easy out. I say most likely because you do have rare occasions where the pitcher gets a hit. But for the most part, it is an easier out before you get back to the top of the order. Well, not so the case if you have Shohei Ohtani. He's a cleanup hitter. He actually hit fourth one time in a weekend series. This past weekend, he hit fourth on Sunday or Saturday.
I don't remember which one, but he primarily hit sixth in the lineup.
Right, and they moved him up to fourth.
He primarily hit seventh. They moved him up to sixth, and then he got the one started fourth, I think.
Yes.
So, if he's pitching, where will he be hitting in the lineup is the other interesting decision that Mike Scioscia has to make.
I would hit him seventh.
Really?
Yes.
And why is this? What's your
Well,
logic?
You know what 7-hole hitters get. They get fastballs. So you'll see a lot of fastballs.
I don't know if Shohei Ohtani is your typical
7-hole hitter.
That would just get fastballs, but yeah.
It'd be interesting to see how they figure out the lineup, right? Because if normally you put your pitcher ninth, you don't think much of it as an American League team going in National League ballpark. But then what does that do to the rest of your order, right? 8-hole, 9-hole. I'm assuming you'd construct it like you would when Shohei Ohtani is DHing. If I had to make a guess. And then that might come into play when you think about, right, if you hit at the top of the order, you're going to get more at-bats than if you hit at the bottom of the order. So Shohei Ohtani might come up in the 5th or 6th or 7th, and you might think about pinch hitting for him because you want to pull him out of the game, or maybe you let him hit again. So a lot of interesting strategy that the Angels will have to consider when Shohei Ohtani plays in a National League ballpark that you wouldn't normally have to consider because they normally give him the day off of hitting the day before, the day of, and the day after he pitches. Now you can't do that. You have to have him hit for himself in the National League ballpark. So what does that do for your lineup in the day before or the day after? Lots of things to think about with Shohei Ohtani being able to hit and pitch as well as he is.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to talk about and theorize because we've never had anything like this before. A few years ago, we saw Madison Bumgarner hit for himself in an American League ballpark as the Giants took out the DH from the lineup. But this is a totally different scenario.
This is an American League team going to a National League team's
Yeah.
ballpark. And again, this one happened for a couple of weeks, so this probably won't be the last time you hear us talk about it on the show. Something to consider for sure.
Yes. Now we are going to get to the standings update. We have not updated the standings yet this year, at least on the show. I'm sure you guys at least follow it a little bit.
Even though it's really too early to look at standings in April, I think. 25 games in for most teams.
Yeah.
That's just my personal opinion. It's a 162-game season. It's not a 25-game season.
Yes.
We don't know a lot about really any team other than the Red Sox got off to a really hot start.
Well, we know the Reds are not doing too good.
They already fired their manager.
Yeah, I was going to get to that.
Okay.
Brian Price, the manager of the Reds, was fired after the Reds' worst start. And one of the worst starts by an MLB franchise in quite some time. Their current record as of today is 5-18. They have 3 wins at home, and you say, oh no, that's not too good. Well, they only have 2 wins on the road, so not doing too good at home or on the road, Cincinnati Reds. But Marlins also off to a rough start, 5-17, but too expected. Not a lot was thought of these teams in the preseason anyways. And then
Did you just call it this preseason? You mean spring training? The off
spring training, preseason predictions, you know.
All right.
But then in the American League, you have the White Sox and the Royals in the same division, both off to rough starts. Both are sitting at 5-15. They have to play each other at some point. You figure one of the teams could get a few wins.
Well, they did. The opening series of the year.
I know this, but
The White Sox looked like world beaters against the Kansas City Royals.
yes,
Matt Davis had a 3-homer day on opening day for the White Sox, and everybody thought, hey, they might be better than we thought they were. Well, no, they were just as good as we thought they'd be.
Then how good are the Royals?
Ooh. You never know. It was early. It was the first series of the year.
All right, we are going to start in the American League. With the American League West, Houston, no surprise really there, leading the way. The Angels still sit half a game back with Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout. Mike Trout leading the league in homers out there in Los Angeles. The Angels really contending for a playoff spot this year, rivaling any other second-place team in the American League. Then in the American League Central, you have Cleveland sits atop the division. Detroit and Minnesota 2.5 games back, both. Minnesota at 8-10 and Detroit at 9-11. Boston leads the American League East. Toronto and New York not far behind. And then you still have teams like the Rays that are 8.5 games out at 8-13. And then the Orioles, disappointing start, I would say. Maybe one of the more disappointing starts in, for sure, the American League, if not all of baseball, as they sit at 6-17. 11.5 games out already. But part of that, too, is due to the fact that the Red Sox have been the best team to date. Off to such a hot start, they lost on opening day and then went 17-1. They've actually lost 3 in a row since getting no hit by the Athletics and Sean Manaea, but the Red Sox have had a great start to the season. Do you think Sean Manaea no-hitting them has anything to do with the 3-game losing streak? As maybe they got a little down on themselves, a little loss of confidence. Anything?
I'm sure there is some loss of confidence when you mentioned statistically they were the best hitting team in the league, and then all of a sudden, right, Sean Manaea of the Oakland A's goes and no hits you. Might be a little shell shock, but they'll be able to bounce back, right? Every team goes through slumps, and you couldn't expect them to stay at what they were doing, keep up the pace that they had. Open up the gate. That was completely unrealistic to think that they would play like that the entire season. You know they were going to go through a slump, and right, maybe that's just this time that they're going through this slump.
Yes, in third place, I mentioned the Yankees sit 4 games out. They sat at 9-9 just 4 games ago when we were wondering if their offense would ever break out. Stanton has not played up to the Giancarlo Stanton $300 million man that we thought he'd be in New York.
He was 4 for 4 last night, so he's gonna turn it around.
You don't let me finish.
Sorry,
I was going to get to that. Stanton and the Yankees have turned it around in the current series at home against the Minnesota Twins. They had a walk-off today. They hit 4 home runs. Actually, they didn't have a walk-off today. They just had 4 home runs. They won 8-3. But Toronto, the Blue Jays sit in second place of that division despite a rough start from their ace Marcus Stroman. 0-2, 0-3 with a over 5 ERA.
Yes, has not allowed less than 4 earned runs in any of his starts. Although Saturday, right, he did pretty good until the 6th inning. 6th inning was really rough. He was 1 pitch away from getting out of that, unfortunately could not do so.
Yes.
And going up against that Yankees lineup, Aaron Judge, Stanton, the rest of that lineup, Didi Gregorius, all the attention is paid to Judge and Stanton, and you still got hitters up and down that lineup. One of the most complete in the league. Brett Gardner setting the table as the leadoff hitter, Didi Gregorius. Actually, they moved him up to the 3-hole to split up Stanton and Judge. That's worked out well for the Yankees. That move was a good move by manager Aaron Boone. But getting back to Marcus Stroman, he has struggled out of the gate, which is not what the Blue Jays want to see, not what he wants or expect from himself. He will turn it around, though. You know who has pitched well, though? Aaron Sanchez.
Yes,
And
yes.
you called it before the season. You said he
Yes.
was going to have a bounce back year.
Yes, I did say that Aaron Sanchez would have a bounce back year. Let us all remember that, and let us all also remember that I picked the Blue Jays to get the second wildcard spot in the American League. So, despite lack of production from Marcus Stroman, who was, I guess, the ace, if you could call it that, of the Blue Jays, they're sitting at 14-6 and just 3 games out of the Red Sox, who have been the best team in baseball. Now we move it along to the National League, where we start in the East, where the Mets currently have a half-game lead over the Philadelphia Phillies. Wait, what? Yes, I did say this right. The Philadelphia Phillies. Strong performances from the young pitching staff. And the veteran of the pitching staff, Jake Arrieta, 10 Ks last week in his start, has led the Phillies to a 14-7 record, a very hot start to the season. The Atlanta Braves are 2 games above 500 and in third. And then the Washington Nationals, who I predicted have the best record in the National League, sit in fourth at 10-13, 3 games below 500. They lost to the San Francisco Giants yesterday. They lost 3 out of 4 to the Rockies a while ago. Unable to solve the NL West, it seems like, for the Nationals. But a few injuries have derailed the start of their season. But it has not derailed Bryce Harper, who leads the league, the National League, in home runs. And then, of course, I already mentioned the Marlins, who unfortunately sit in last of the NL Central. That will bring us to the... Oh, I just said the Marlins are in last of the NL Central. No, I was getting ahead of myself. The Marlins are in last of the NL East. Now to the NL Central, where you have a tie. The St. Louis Cardinals and the Milwaukee Brewers are tied atop that division. The Cardinals are 13-8, and the Milwaukee Brewers are 14-9. The Brewers have played 2 more games than the Cardinals. They have 1 more win and 1 more loss. Thus, the reason for the tie. This may be the closest. Actually, it is the closest division in baseball. I can tell you that because I know math. The Chicago Cubs and the Pittsburgh Pirates are tied for second, 1.5 games out of first. You have the Cincinnati Reds, who are off to such a bad start. They are 8 games out at 5-18. I mentioned the Brewers having played 2 more games than the Cardinals. They are still tied. Well, that's the same thing with the Pirates and the Cubs. The Pirates are 12-10, and the Cubs are 11-9. The Pirates have played 2 more games, but they are still tied because they have both 1 more win and 1 more loss. Actually, as I look at this right now, they're both the same amount of games back, which means they're tied in the division. But the Cubs, who have played less games and have won 11 out of 20, that gives them the better win percentage, actually. And the Pirates, who have won 12 out of 22, they have the worst win percentage. The same goes for the Milwaukee-St. Louis thing I was talking about. The Brewers have played 2 more games, and they've won 14 out of 23. So they have the worst win percentage than the Cardinals, who have won 13 out of 21. So all the teams in the NL Central are hot. The Cardinals have won 8 out of their last 10 and are currently riding a 3-game win streak. The Brewers are 7-3 in their last 10, currently on a 6-game win streak. That now brings us to the NL West, where you have the Diamondbacks that sit atop of the division, 4 games ahead of the Dodgers, and 4.5 games up on the Rockies, 5.5 games up on the Giants, and 7.5 games up on the San Diego Padres. This division should be very interesting, a lot of rivalries. Even the Padres are trying to start some rivalries with the Rockies, getting into the brawls and everything. Very interesting to see how that'll all play out. Of course, you have the traditional rivalries, the Dodgers and the Giants, and then the Rockies and the Diamondbacks have sort of merged as rivals these past few years, playing a lot of competitive games. What has stood out to you about the NL West division?
In the early going,
Yes.
I think the Dodgers struggles. And most people would say the Diamondbacks hot start, which surprised me, but I didn't think the Dodgers would start off as bad as they had.
Well, I didn't think their offense would play as poorly as it has this year. It's bound to turn it around at some point.
I know they'll turn it around because they're the Dodgers and there's just too much talent not to turn it around. And even last year, everybody was panicking when they were at about 500 at the end of April, and then they went on that tear from May to the World Series, where it seems like they literally could not lose. So they'll turn it around like they did a year ago. They got off to a slow start a year ago, and look where they ended up as champions of the National League. So no reason to panic, Dodger fans, but just something that surprised me in the early going of the season in the NL West.
We have a caller now on the line. Hello, you are live on Extra Innings on National Sports Radio. Do you have a question or comment for us this evening?
Hi, I'm Poppy from Lakewood, Colorado, and I was wondering what you guys think the effect has been, if any, on the 6-visit rule. I'll hang up and hear what you guys think about that. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for your call. We always do appreciate our listeners' calls. I believe the call number is on the side of the screen. If you did not know, it's 720-357-2258. But back to the caller's question about the 6 mound visit per game rule. I have not seen it actually been. I've not seen any team go over it this year. Now, I may be wrong. I cannot think. Can you think of off the top of your head anyone going over 6 mound visits?
No, I cannot.
Yes, I think the closest. There was a team that got to 6 yesterday. 2 days ago, maybe.
Yes, I think you're right. I think teams are more conscientious of the mound visits. Yesterday in the Rockies game, you saw the catcher Tony Walters go out and talk to his pitcher in the middle of a 7th inning, which for Rockies fans was not good. And he went out and talked to the pitcher, but the umpire did not count it as a mound visit, and at the time they had 2 remaining, and then the pitching coach for the Rockies, Steve Foster, went out to talk with the Rockies pitcher, who I believe at the time was Scott Oberg.
Yes.
Or Jake McGee or Antonio Senzatella, who knows. They needed 3 pitchers to get out of the 7th. That's a story for another day. But mound visits, teams are more conscientious. You saw the pitching coach ask the umpire, did that last visit count? Did it not count? How many more do we have? I think fielders, too, are a little hesitant to go talk to their pitcher because it'll count as a mound visit, which it'll be interesting to see what the average time of games are now, if that's actually helped at all. It's too early to tell if it will actually help, but I think teams are more conscientious of when they go out and talk to the mound. They're not doing it as often, it seems like. The big question, though, that Commissioner Manfred in the office of Major League Baseball wants to answer is, will that actually speed up gameplay? It's too early to tell, I think, whether or not it actually does. But as far as teams being conscientious of it, they definitely have, and they have not used, it seems like, as many mound visits.
Yes, I would have to say it hasn't had a real big effect. If in the first month, while teams were still getting used to the new rule, if I saw teams running out of mound visits constantly, I would say it's had a big effect, but I haven't seen that to be the case. I don't think it has really come into play at any sort of point. And to be honest, I am still unclear as to what happens when you go over the 6 mound visit. What happens when your pitching coach takes a few steps out of the dugout, calls time, and then that's the 7th time they've had to do that in a game. What are the punishments? What happens?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'm sure you could look it up. Get on this. Look this up right now. Because that is a very good question, right? Is it considered a balk? Is it, what happens? I think the most logical explanation would be there's a balk. Just like if a pitcher does something to deceive the runner or something like that. Van is looking that up right now. Because they've talked a lot about, yes, you get 6 mound visits, but I've never heard what exactly happens if you go over. If you try to go to the mound a 7th time, will the umpire just stop you and say, hey, you can't do that, you've already used your mound visits? Would there be a balk? That is what Van is looking up right now. Have you found anything yet? No, he shakes his head no.
No, I have not.
Oh, okay. Well, keep looking.
Also, a pitching change does not count as a mound visit.
Yes, that's true. If you make a pitching change in the middle of an inning, like the Rockies did yesterday, it does not count as a mound visit. It counts as a pitching change. So that will not count against your 6 mound visits per game. Also, you are given 1 additional mound visit for extra innings. So you go to the 10th inning, the game is tied, you already used your 6 mound visits, hey, you get an extra 1. Because we're going to extra innings. I don't know if that applies, say you have 3 mound visits going into extra innings, if you get another one, so you would then have 4, or if you get 1 per inning. Not exactly sure how that works. I'll have to look that up too. But it has been interesting. I think the results of this are something that you won't really see. It'll be something, right, maybe the catcher and pitcher spend more time discussing signals before the game, so they don't have to call time and do it during the game and waste a mound visit. Maybe the pitcher talks to his middle infielders or his first baseman about pickoff plays, who's covering the bag, if there's a comebacker, maybe he talks to them about that before the game, spends more time doing that than he would have normally had to do, so that they don't have to waste a mound visit. Not necessarily waste, because it's important to be on the same page on pickoff plays and things like that. But maybe a lot of the stuff that fans can't see behind the scenes that goes on in preparation for the game, I'm sure it has had some effect. And Van is now waving his hand and smiling at me. It looks like he's found something.
Yes, under the new rule, each team's catcher will have the opportunity to check with the umpire if there is a cross-up of pitching signals, and he can ask for a additional trip, and the umpire may grant him permission for that additional trip. And as far as discipline, if you break it without acknowledging that you're out of bound visits, without the catcher asking for an extra one, I don't think the pitching coach can come out and ask for an extra one, but the umpire isn't empowered to enforce the rules up to and including an ejection from the game. Now, I do not know exactly who would get ejected, if it's the pitcher, if it's the catcher making the mound visit, if it's the shortstop making the mound visit, if it's the first baseman making the mound visit, or if it's the pitching coach or the manager that decides to make the mound visit. I do not know who will be ejected, and the other thing they might do is, if, say, the manager goes out there for a pitching change and it's the 7th one, or if the manager goes out there just for a mound visit and not a pitching change, the umpire may say you now have to take out your pitcher, even if it's the first mound visit of an inning, which is interesting.
Why would they do that?
That's just what I'm thinking. That just makes sense because you're out of mound visits and you're...
Oh, you're saying if you're out of mound visits. Okay.
Yes. And the manager or pitching coach goes to talk. You don't have any left, and, well, I guess now you could have to take your pitch out, which would seem very reasonable. I feel like an ejection is kind of too far.
Right, I feel like that's kind of unreasonable.
Yes.
I would say a balk seems like the most reasonable punishment to me. And another thing I wanted to add on that, if the catcher and pitcher aren't on the same page, they mix up signals. Why they give them an extra mound visit? It's really a safety thing. I'm sure there's nothing more scarier if you're...
More scarier.
Oh.
More scary.
Not good grammar. Scarier. That's a word, isn't it?
But more scary.
I know what I said, and I know it was not proper grammar.
Okay, go on.
There's nothing scarier if you're Gary Sanchez, the Yankees catcher. You got our oldest Chapman coming in the ninth, and you think he's going to throw an off-speed pitch, and all of a sudden, 100-mile-an-hour fastball is coming straight at you. That would be... Well, first off, if I'm the catcher, I'd be mad at our oldest Chapman. I'd say, come on, dude, I called for an off-speed pitch. What are you doing? And then, well, you don't want to get drilled.
You have some protection on.
Well, you have some protection, but do you want to get hit with a 100-mile-an-hour fastball right in the chest when you think a curveball is coming at you?
No, I do not.
Right, that's what I thought. So it's a safety thing. They don't want catchers getting hurt. Probably the umpires don't want to get hurt either. Maybe you're thinking a fastball's coming, a curveball's coming, you can't block into the dirt, and it hops up and hits the umpire.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah, the umpire would like this.
Yes, very smart. So he wants the catcher and pitcher to be on the same page. Catcher and pitcher want to be on the same page. So that's the reason for a potential giving of an extra mound visit if they're not on the same page. And maybe they mixed up signals.
Yes. Do you have anything else to add for the show?
I think that will just about wrap it up.
Yes, that will wrap it up for Owen. I am Van Noland. You have been listening to Extra Innings on National Sports Radio. We will be back again with another episode next Tuesday, same time, same place. Make sure you tune in again. This has been Extra Innings on National Sports Radio.